number of loopholes around basic electronic signatures, the simple electronic signatures. And what we've tried to do is to explain to people and educate people that there are risks associated with sharing documentation in a digital format when you are not protecting the data that's included, and also you're not meeting your compliance requirements. In a lot of regions, electronic signatures are more than adequately adhered to in the legislation. I know in Qatar they have a legislation as well accepting electronic signatures. 99% of all countries accept electronic signatures. But it comes to the process of having legal enforceability of those documents. If I have to go to a court for any reason, if the signer of a document disputes something that's in that document, do you have enough information to go to court? Do you have enough information to prove that that signer signed the document? And essentially prove that the information stored in that document is in fact what that customer of yours signed, or even an employee for that matter as well. So I want to look very basically for SMEs around the problem of using paper. And I think we kind of all agree to a certain extent that when paper came about, businesses have been looking for a way to move away from paper. They wanted to reduce the amount of paper they deal with. They wanted to get away from having to store loads and loads of paper in documents, in files, on premise. And that's around productivity. A lot of that is around productivity. An employee can spend over a year, they can probably lose between 30 and 40 hours of their time dealing with paperwork. And that equates to about 30–40% of their time looking for lost information, looking for lost data. You have a customer that calls in asking for a copy of his invoice or a copy of a contract from last year. That employee then has to search for that documentation. There's user frustration. You're sending a client a document that you're asking them to print, to sign, to scan. They want access to a document. Maybe they've signed it 2–3 months ago. Now they want a copy of that contract. You're then having to provide that much quicker, but it doesn't help the customer. It means that the customer is having to wait for replies, and it means your time and resources taken up trying to help the user, that even if you are replying back to them within a couple of hours, they are still going to experience some kind of user frustration. The cost to share hard copies of data now is 31 times more expensive than sharing it digitally. When you take into account the storage of documentations, the printing costs, the postal costs, all around the security of that data as well, it's a lot more expensive than if you were just sharing data in a digital format. Paper pricing, we've seen, especially in the last 12 months, how prices have increased, and that's now up to 25%. That's going to continue to increase as well. Paper is now a growing expense on businesses, because if you think a per transaction level, if you're sending just a 2-page or 3-page contract to a client, there's, again, it's the printing of that page, it's the time taken to create that envelope, to stamp it, and then to share it with that user. And then we've got the customer experience. We're finding more and more companies now, if they want to be competitive in this space, they have to focus on the customer experience. Customers aren't as focused as what they are around price. It's still a big concern, price, but the focus now is around efficiency. It's around getting something signed or completed or processed quickly, because majority of the times these processes are just a manual process. They want to do business, they're impulsive, they want to go ahead, but they're being held up because the process of signing documentation or processing documentation can be an issue. So when it's either invoices, it's records, it's contracts, any other vital files, keeping them stored within the business as a paper document is going to be dangerous for the long-term safety of your business. Not only exactly around what we spoke about with the cost associated to the business, the archiving of those paper records, but it also creates delays, not just for the business, but also for the employee as well. So you can see here, going paperless can be scary. So paper has been a real part of businesses for so long, and companies and organizations have to kind of strive for that paperless office. But in fact, a lot of them, in theory, a lot of them are going to fail to push through to that paperless world unless it's done correctly. And this is where the solution comes in. This is where we feel that we have a good alternative and we have a solution, and that's digitizing the documents in a way that we can speed up the process, not just for the employees, for the business, but also then for the company, for the customers as well. We focused on 3 main priorities around that. That's around management, compliance, and then the customer journey. Management, straightforward. It's then having easy access to those documents, so that when you want to send out a document, you have a new customer onboarding, you're very easily able to open that documentation, send it through to the user and allow him to then complete that online. And then also having some kind of storage process that you know exactly where documentation is going to be stored. You're complying with privacy laws or data protection laws, is that none of that personal information is being released as well. So a lot of leaders within business, within SMEs, often see digital transformation as a path to grow their business, to streamline the operations and strengthen those relationships they have with the customers. But it's really important that they deeply engage in capturing the transformation's return of investment. There is a massive return that you can kind of achieve if you just focus on the result, the compliance, the internal audit, which is something that most businesses forget about as well. So the world has changed as we've kind of seen it over the last 15 to 20 years, and especially maybe over the last 12 to 14 months the most. And a lot of that has been changed around digital. The world where it was before, which was comfortable sending out paper documents, to sending out a lot of paper documents, storing paper documents on premise, has changed. There's now over 4.6 billion people are active on the internet. Mobile users now account for 91% of total internet users. So as a result of that, fraud is now perpetrated by clever and very smart criminals who see the digital world as a huge opportunity to make money. So this poses a kind of tremendous threat to organizations of all type and all sizes, not just the large corporations and not the very small, but also for the SMEs in the middle that are processing and dealing with a lot of customer information. So when you're dealing with this information now, it needs to be captured, delivered, processed, and represented in an electronic way, but it needs to be done on a compliant level. And that's the most important part. And then if we look at the customer journey, it's important that we kind of realign and invest in this new technology, because the specific focus around customer experience, the CX and the user X of that customer is important. We're finding more and more customers now that are receiving options on a daily basis between yourselves and a competitor. And when you compare yourself, it's not always going to be about price. It's not always going to be about product, and sometimes very much around the customer experience, the customer journey. And that's where this is important as well, because a user that is filling out paperwork or signing up to a service needs the ability to complete that service quickly and efficiently. Not feeling like he's going through a process, he's doing more work than he should, because then a lot of the times that customer might even start to compare you to a competitor, and you might even potentially lose that customer as well. So Signiflow focuses on a couple of main features, but the main feature is automation of the flow of documents. So we handle documents, paper documents, instead of transferring it, making a digital document into paper, sending it to a user, into an employee, and then getting that document back. And you might even scan that document back. You're then transferring the document back from paper back to digital again. We actually handle the full automation of the flow of the documents and the data included in that document, which becomes a digital process. It means you're not having to rely on paper process. You're not having to slow down the process waiting for users, either customers or employees, to fill out documentation, to sign it, because things can be done much quicker. Sharing documents both inside and outside your organization maintains that visibility and transparency throughout the process. There is no issue around who has access to which information. You know exactly which users were able to view the documents, which users were able to view the data included in those documents, and what requirements are going to be met to ensure that your compliance is met. The system also allows you to legally approve, to sign documents anywhere, anytime. And that's important this age as well. With so many users using mobile phones, you need the ability to allow users on multiple devices to complete documentation. Clients do not have the ability to be in the office 24/7 anymore. We're working with different time zones around the world, and we're working in an age where a lot of users have a home office that could be a fraction of what they have available at their business office. So the way we kind of focus on that is what we call a digital signature. It's a type of electronic signature, and this is where Signiflow focuses on being a digital disruptor. This is where we kind of change of what's been done for the last 15 to 20 years, because we use a version of electronic signature that encrypts a document. So we're attaching an invisible digital code, and the importance of that is because we're making the tampering and duplication impossible for hackers. That document, if it's then intercepted by someone, it makes it a lot harder for anybody to do anything. It protects the information stored in that document, but you're protecting the document. You're making sure that if that document, for whatever reason, gets intercepted, nothing can be done with it. No information can be taken and used in another process. So how we've kind of defined our process, our philosophy, if you're going to sign a document, we kind of feel that going forward, you need to ensure that you're doing it properly. It cannot just be around the efficiency process of digital signing. It needs to have the compliance requirement as well. And I'll go into a little bit more details around that as well. So a digital signature focuses on three main elements. It needs to ensure that the identity is valid. It needs to ensure that the person that you're asking to sign that document is indeed that person. We can do that in a number of different ways. We have one-time PINs, we have multi-factor authentication, we do integration into local identity programs with government. So it means when you're signing a document, you can guarantee that the user that's signing that document is indeed that user. You can decide at a local level, at a business level, what you need to ensure that that compliance is met. And how we work is that we don't just focus on the entire globe and we lump everybody together. We don't just focus on a local business and we say you are the same as every business, because not every business is the same. We find that businesses of all levels, even if they are on the same level as an SME, are going to be different. They are going to have different requirements. So that's where we work really well, is that we can identify different businesses in different locations and we can provide a product that matches exactly to their requirements. We ensure that the document is tamper-proof. So the document hasn't changed. It means throughout the process, when the document is originated through the company, it's sent out to the customer, we can prove that the document won't be changed, and then when it gets returned, we can prove the document still has not been changed. We can ensure that the signature has a long-term validation. I'll go into the more detail about that just now, but it ensures that in 5 years, 10 years, or in 25 years, the document won't change. So if you get called up and you get asked to provide some information around the process of how the document was stored and where it's kept, and to prove exactly that the document wasn't changed, you have enough information to do that. And then the most important kind of phrase that we use is non-repudiation. It means that if the customer or a user disputes signing a document, if he disputes a term in the document, if you had to go to a court of law, it means that the signer cannot deny having signed the document, because that signature is basically embedded into the document. He would have had to verify himself at a local level when signing that document and verify exactly through evidence to be able to provide that and make it legally admissible in a court of law. So when we focus on what we are currently seeing in the industry, what we're currently seeing in the world, it's very much around what we call an e-signature or electronic signature. And this is what Europeans term as a simple electronic signature. The signature is an image. You can see on the document here, it's an image of a signature. It's just a picture of a signature. There's a couple of issues around that, though. It means that very easily when you're sharing that documentation, if it's an image, it means you can just right click on that signature and you can copy it as an image. You can save that image on your local PC, which gives you the ability to go and create fraudulent documents. Not saying you will, but there are hackers out there that are going to intercept documents. They have all the personal information stored in that document, but now they have the ability to go and create a Word document, create a letter, create an onboarding process, sign something, fill in all the customer's information, go and save it as a PDF, and then share it to another business, creating some kind of fraudulent process through that means. So attaching an image to a basic document is kind of not high enough. It's not good enough in this level. You can see the name as well. The ability to just fill in the own name. The user's being asked to fill in his own name, but that's causing some issues because, again, he's known as CB, so he puts his name down as CB. If I had to go to court, it becomes a little bit harder to kind of prove who that user was. You can see another identity. This is Adobe Reader. It's a free version of Adobe. You get this audit trail that travels with this documentation. But you can see exactly over here is that the signing time was taken from the clock of the signer's computer. So imagine if I sent you this document and you signed it. There was a dispute in a month's time. We had to go to court, and the court wants to know from me, when did this contract come into being? I would be unable to prove that because you were under control of the date and time that was applied to that contract. It means that we wouldn't have any proof to when this contract came into being. And there's issues around that because I can also go and forward date. I can go and back date. I can say I signed this document a month ago, or I can say I'm signing this document in 30 days' time, a time that doesn't even existed yet. There's a lot of issues around that process. So that's the second big issue around the basic electronic signature. The first one being the image, the second one being the clock of the signer's computer. These are all little issues that make massive differences if this ever goes to court. The third issue you can see here, and a little bit different, is that this is a lock. So when a company complies with Adobe technology, you can see here the source of trust was the Adobe approved trust list. It means that they are complying with certain requirements by Adobe for them to lock the document and issue this green tick. So this would travel as a PDF, and it's all well and fine. This is one user, the document gets locked. It means that the document cannot be changed, because if anything's changed, that green tick will fall away. But the process around basic electronic signatures, if there were 2 users or 3 users or 10 users, the documents would still be locked once. And that's at the end of the transaction. So think of the process of 3 directors in a business signing a document. The first user creates the document, sends it out, and then the other 2 directors have to sign it. Once those directors have signed it and the document gets locked, we're unsure if the document was changed between those 3 directors. It means the document goes into a bit of a black hole while it's being signed. So yes, it's being signed. Yes, there's some information around the date and around the users included information. But the document itself, we're unsure of what was changed. And the only way to do that would be somebody sitting there with the original document and the completed contract and going word for word through the document to see exactly what changed. So when we focus on a digital signature, when we focus on something what we call an advanced electronic signature, you can see slightly a few differences around how we build in that process. We use a cryptographic process. This signature that's on the document here is actually a visible signature, but it's embedded into the document. That cryptographic process, that hashing of the signature, gets embedded into the document. So when a user clicks on the signature, it actually pops up information. It includes all the signature details. So think of it very much like the fingerprint. You go into a police station, into any kind of government organization, they scan your fingerprint. There's information stored based on your personal identifying fingerprint. And that's exactly the same way with your signature. It's a unique code. It's a unique hashing of your signature that's stored with the document and travels with the document. And it means you still got to get that green tick from Adobe, because we are still compliant with Adobe technology. But you got to get details around the actual validity of the signature. You got to get the details that was required by you, the business, to verify that the document was legally binding. So you get information like the user's name, the user's email address, you get signing time and the date. And this is different to what you get on an electronic signature because it's embedded timestamp into the document. So we don't take any details from the user's computer. We use something called a TSA, an International Timestamp Authority. And when the signature is applied to the document, we send a request out to that server. It's a government-based server. We take the official date and time, and then we lock it onto the document. So we have a date and time that is legally admissible if this ever went to court. We know exactly the date and time that the signature was applied. Not when the document was completed, but when the document was actually signed. We also get the information that the document has not been modified. And the way we do this is it's different to electronic signatures. We don't just lock the document at the end of the signing process. We lock the document at every single signature. So Kelly here, for instance, signed the documentation. They might have been the first user, might have been the last user, but as soon as he signed it, we lock the document. If you have 5 signers or 10 signers or 20 signatories on a document, we lock it exactly those many times, because we want the user to have that open and that verification of the process. When he signed the document, how can we prove what the document looked like? We can do that because we're storing that information in the document. We know exactly what the document looked like. We can provide them a copy of before anybody else signed it. So step by step, if you had 5 users, 10 users, or 20 users, they would know throughout the process that nothing was changed between users. And then because the last signer signs the document is then completely sealed, and then no user can then change the document without this green tick falling away. This becomes a yellow exclamation, and using Adobe technology, which is quite handy as well, it actually tells you exactly what was changed in the document. So using all of these processes through digital signatures, we can include different levels. We can include verified identities. These can be a government-led identity program. Dubai, for instance, have a UAE pass. Singapore have their Sing pass. Belgium have a digital ID pass as well. It's a verification at government level that verifies your identity and you can use to sign documents. We integrate very easily with HSM, with other crypto providers, with digital certificate providers. So if you have a global sign certificate for a reason, an AATL certificate through another provider, we can then use those details. You can integrate that very easily through a user account. And when you're signing the document, you're actually signing with your digital certificate. These are all done through the sign certification, the CA certificates. And all of those different items together create a document that is still being completed efficiently. It still becomes an easy process. There is no difference, but the details are important. The way the document was signed and the way the document data is kept on the document is important. And that ensures when you sign this document, you're getting a much higher level of compliance. It means that if anybody disputes this document, you have enough information to prove exactly what the requirements are and go to a court of law and say, I can prove who the signers were, I can prove what was filled in, and I can prove exactly the date and time that they filled this information in. So how does Signiflow compare in the market when we're comparing what we say a digital signature is to a basic electronic signature? Well, it's an embedded signature. So straight away, that's the main difference. That's a big difference for us. It's an embedded cryptographic signature that's inside the document. It cannot be replicated. It's unique to that signing process. And when you compare that to electronic signature, which is a graphical image, it's just a picture of your signature. Remember, it doesn't matter how the signature looks at the end of the day, it's more the intent of signing. But this is just an image that's just floating around a document that I can very easily delete off the document, or I can go and copy and create another fraudulent document. Signiflow doesn't work on signatures costing. We don't work on certain levels around the size of documents. We offer unlimited signatures. It means that it's very much around sending as many documents as you can, because we don't want the business to be in a position of not sending out half of the company's documents. We don't want the company to be in a position where you're not sending out the less valued documents. We want businesses to embrace digital transformation to kind of move. So it's not a cost per signature or cost per workflow model. We offer unlimited portfolios or folders, where most often a basic electronic provider will have a cost per portfolio, where cost is included per business that you're onboarding. As I mentioned, we support external qualified certificate authorities. So if you already have a digital certificate through a token device or on a digital device, it means that we can integrate that very easily. And when you sign your document, you're signing with that digital certificate. Hosting for us is very easy. We don't regard the world as one region. We split it up. We currently have 8 different global data centers, which means that hosting either in region or even hosting on premise, you can host it yourself, or we can host it for you in the cloud in that region as well. We can spin up servers and different data centers in any city around the world. And that compared to when you focus on a basic electronic provider, their data centers are generally going to be in the larger states of between the US or Europe or even Australia. Where your data is stored is obviously very important as well. If you are based in the Middle East, if you're based in Europe, do you want your data stored in another country? The signing process as well. We don't just include the IP address. We don't just include the browser the user used. A lot of these can be cloned. We also include location, the longitude and latitude details. We include the Google Map location of signers. So when a user signs a document, you know exactly where in the world he signed the document. And that's important because if you need a 2-factor authentication, it means it sends a one-time PIN, an SMS to the user on his phone. We can request that the location of his phone is taken, and we can request that the location of his computer is taken. If ever you have to go to court, it means that you have enough information to put that PC, that computer, and that phone in the same location at the same time when the document was signed. And again, that's just another step that you have enough evidence that if you ever need to go to court, you can prove somebody signed a document. We embed the audit trail into the PDF. So it means that the audit trail is stored within the PDF and travels with the PDF. You don't need our software to kind of to see exactly what the audit trail is. You don't need an additional document. We have a PDF built in, and it tells you exactly who the signer was and what information was required when they signed their document. We also regard companies as the most important brand. So when you are sending a document to one of your customers or a new customer, they don't know anyone else. They know they're dealing with you. They want to receive an email from you. They want to click on a link. They want to go to a location to sign the document that is branded with your details, sign the documentation, and then leave your company. Because at the end of the day, you are the only company that they're signing up with. For them to tell them to go and sign onto another platform becomes very difficult because then they're getting misunderstood exactly who they're signing with. Are they signing with you or they're signing with another provider? And then how we regard customer service is that everyone needs to have 24/7 customer service. We're in a world that the world is getting smaller, and it means that somebody waking up in Australia could be somebody going to sleep in America. And it's important that you have that customer service around the world at all stages, that if somebody is having a problem signing, they get assisted, because it's important to get that return of the signing. It's important to get that user assisted through the process, because you do not want to be in a stage that you have half of your documentation being stored and being signed in a paper process and the other half being done digitally, because that's not going to make a digital transformation process successful. So again, just on the information, the system is very much catered around the business, because every business is different. So whether you choose a local server, we have, like I mentioned, 8 servers around the world. I have one in London, I have one in Holland. We have servers based in Australia, in America, in South America, in Asia. And we're just about to deploy our server now based in Qatar as well. You can choose exactly how you want to store your data. And whether that means you then use a cloud service, or whether you choose to deploy on-premise, either as a physical server or a cloud-hosted server, is up to you, because you have your own management policies, your own IT policies. And we help you with those compliance to ensure that everything is ticked from your side and we're doing it your way, not for anybody else's way. When it comes to compliance as well, there is a long list of different compliance technology that we meet. We are continually going through country by country, and as a new act comes on board, we're then ensuring that we don't just meet, but we actually go past what their requirements are. The main one we kind of focuses are very much around the European regulation, because they are the most advanced, and we're seeing other countries as well that are following suit. They are either doing a government-led signing signature law, or they are focusing on what has already been adapted. And that's very much around the differences between electronic signatures. Not all electronic signatures are the same, and it's important for the government to define exactly what needs to be signed. So when you're signing a document, if it's a high-level document, what level of signature do you need? What level of identification do you need to go through? And as long as then you comply with those requirements and you exceed those requirements, you're never going to have an issue around compliance. So I've kind of gone through the presentation a little bit quicker than I thought. I don't know if there's any questions on what it is, anything that you want me to kind of go through again on the process. Dr. Salah, I don't know if you want to, Mohammed, if you want to take the floor as well, and perhaps you can explain some more information just around legislation in Qatar and how it focuses on digital signing.
Yes, I would like to highlight a few points. We've just received a question now saying, is our system now that you've just explained compliant with the, or has the ministries approved it? Well, in fact, no, there is no need for such an action to be taken, in as much as the technology that Signiflow is playing is compliant with the Qatari law, and as such, it's well protected with the highest authority, which is deriving from the Qatari law itself. That's on one part. The second part is there are, especially going back to the digital signature, where I would like to highlight that the digital signature, although it's mentioned and spoken of by my colleague Greg, yet I would like to emphasize and highlight the fact that there are 2 types of digital signatures. There is the symmetric and there is the asymmetric. Excuse me. And we're using actually the asymmetric key, which fact creates a PKI system which deals with 2 public keys, a private key and a public key. But now regarding that thing, there are 4 basic commodities that the digital signature provides. The first commodity is the knowing who's on the other side dealing with you. So you know the person, you're sure 100% who's the person behind the computer at the other end. Number 2, you're sure of the integrity. That means of the mail you have received, meaning that or document signed, meaning that it was sent, meaning that it was received by you exactly as it was signed and set, go. Number three, it creates also non-repudiation, meaning that the receiver cannot say, I have not received it. He cannot disclaim it, nor the sender can disclaim it either, because he's bound to say, yes, I have sent that document. So there you are. In a court of law, that's what stands. It's the digital certificate based on protocol X509 of ITU. Now, regarding the Qatari law, it specifies of two also different types, the advanced signature and the qualified. And we're talking here of the qualified digital signature, which is really the theme of the business itself. You are insured of the you're 100% sure of no, not integrity. You're sure of the authenticity of the person who's sending your email, and you're sure of the integrity, and you're sure of the non-repudiation, and you're sure of the confidentiality, meaning that if the nature is of the message is what you call confidential, then you can encrypt that message. Now, this is as far as the law is concerned. Of course, we'll be dealing with that next month on the 20th of April and at large, and explaining the whole, the full aspect of it.
Hello, Hamad.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Great. Still, was you can hear him? Oh.
Greg, are you there? Muhammad?
Yes, he is hearing you, but maybe his microphone is mute.
It was. Apologies.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right. I think I've discussed that, and why don't you see from the floor who has questions to throw at you?
Yeah, I'm more than welcome to take any questions.
Well, it seems there are no further questions. There are two questions.
I can't see the chat or hear anybody. Ah, okay. So I can see one over here as well. The product, how it compares to DocuSign. So DocuSign is what we would compare with as a electronic signature provider. They do really well in the world. They are very much built around efficiency. We have to remember as well that they are an American company. They focus on American law. American law is what we regard as the e-Sign Act. And the e-Sign Act describes electronic signatures as legally binding. And that works well to a certain extent, but the only way you get legally binding is if both users consent and agree that they signed a document. They're agreeing to the terms in the document, because the issue comes is if one of the users disputes something in the document, one of the users comes back and says, I didn't sign that document. I never saw that document. And that product then, that is an issue, because if you had to go to a court, the court wouldn't ask the signer to prove anything. The court would ask you, the sender, to prove the signer signed it. So they would say, provide some evidence that this signer signed the document. And you can then go through the policy of DocuSign and you can say, we sent him the email and we can prove that it was received. And you're going, yeah, you can prove it was received, but you cannot prove that he was in fact the person that received it. I've had a fact that my daughters had access, or you can have access, a secretary or a PA, a personal assistant can have access to that email. There is a shortage of information. You're unable to even prove at a certain level when the document was signed, the date or time, because it was under control of the signer of the document. It means that they could change the date and the time of the document. So DocuSign does really well and does certain things very well around efficiency, but there are certain risks through using a basic signature provider. And I don't want to kind of say it's just DocuSign. These are all companies that are using basic electronic signatures. They're very much focused at a low level of signing. So I hope that answers your question around DocuSign. I see another question around integration. Yeah, we integrate very simply with Microsoft 365 with SAP. We are an API-based system. We have some companies that don't use our software front end at all. They use our API system. Essentially, how we integrate is that if you're using a CRM system, even Salesforce or SharePoint, a document request or an API request is sent to Signify to get a document signed. So we're not sharing a document. We're sharing a link that gets sent out to a user. That user then receives an email. We complete the signing of the process through our system with all of your company branding. And then that document signed, or that signed process that's stored on your servers, is then completed and the user exits from your system. That document then can be uploaded onto your system and stored within your system as well, within your CRM or ERP. And we probably find that about 70% of our products nowadays are built in through APIs. We need it to be efficient. We need digital transformation, but we need still that efficiency process. Replacing paper with numbers of emails or 2 or 3 different systems is not going to be efficient. It needs to be done in a process that you have one CRM system and a customer or an employee can finalize a document, sign a document in a simple and efficient manner. And that means integration, which is something we do very easily. We haven't yet found any product that we're unable to integrate into, and that documentation can be sent through every user. Any other questions from your side?
No question. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, you're welcome, Hamid. Okay, so I think, Doctor, that that kind of probably explained it way too well, that everybody understands it. But I'm sure some questions will come up afterwards that perhaps they can reach out to you, and I'm more than happy to assist with any answers.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I guess we have arrived to the end of our second web session. And here I would like to remind you all to join us on our third session, whereby I shall discuss in detail Know Your Qatari Digital Law. The session shall be in English and partly in Arabic, inasmuch as the original of this document is in Arabic, and reference may be required to this effect. The session will be held on April 20th, 2021 at 11 a.m. Qatar local time, which is GMT +3. Thank you very much for joining us, and see you in our future web sessions, which drag all the way to the end of the year, each month a session. And sometimes, God willing, we may have 2. Thank you very much and all the best. Thank you.